And we are live. So every Sunday, I host something on Facebook Live called Self Care Sundays, talking about a topic on mental health and inviting a local expert or really any expert that can talk on the topic and share some insights on that. Today, we have Dan Newberry of Lift for the 22. Welcome to the chat.
Hey, welcome. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. That's all good. Hey, it's a weekend. You got to be a little chill. If something goes wrong, it's all good.
Oh, I know. And it's been that type of weekend too. So if something's gonna go wrong, it will go wrong. So.
Oh no. Well, how did the 22-mile walk go for you yesterday?
Well, this one was brutal, man. We were quarantined, so we're like on house arrest for 90 days, and so no gyms were closed. So I wasn't really able to train like I usually am. So I was 20 pounds heavier, and the weather didn't cooperate. So it's not like I gotta get outside and really trained or got ready for it. So this one was it was very reminiscent of the first one I did in 2016 when I was like 240 pounds. So, but we're recuperating today, and but overall I feel pretty good.
Okay. Before we jump too far in, I know we've got the 22-mile walk that you did yesterday. You do Lift for the 22. What's the significance behind the number 22?
So the 22 came from a statistic, I believe, in 2015-ish, about the 22 veterans that commit suicide a day in the United States. Now that number has went up and it has went down. It fluctuates, but the 22 kind of just stuck. So it just became that moniker, if you will, of veteran suicide prevention and awareness.
Yeah. Jumping into Lift for the 22, do you want to explain kind of what that organization is, your role in it, and how it helps the veterans?
Sure. So I'm the director of Lift for the 22, and what it is, it's a nonprofit that seeks to provide gym memberships for veterans and also connect veterans to gyms within the community. What we do is we visit gyms throughout the country, and we host community events, and we invite local resources and mental health resources to be on site. And we do a charity workout. We offer the opportunity for other local services to talk about what they do and what they offer. On top of that, we get veterans back into competitive sports like mixed martial arts or something along those lines. So it's really it's a really all-encompassing thing to help vets network and transition through fitness.
Okay. And you guys, through donations, try to offer veterans gym memberships, right? Is it like a year's worth, or how does that angle work?
So typically we try to get a veteran a year's worth of a gym membership, and then the hope is that they'll continue on with that membership after that year is up.
Okay. How long have you been involved with Lift for the 22?
So I got involved with Lift for the 22 in March of 2018. I wasn't one of the founders of Lift for the 22. The program itself was founded by a gentleman named Carter Davis and Dennis Wright out of Oregon. And over time, Carter had moved to Chicago, and in 2017, I started a free fitness class here in Milwaukee called 22 Fitness. And I did it every Sunday, and it was kind of a small class, and then it just grew, and along with the apparel that I started with it, that led me to meet Lift for the 22, and then from there we decided to join forces and go on a national tour together, and then Carter ultimately decided, hey, you know what, I feel like this is in safe hands, and he pursued a career in healthcare. And so they asked that I would be the director of the organization.
Okay. I think when people think about mental health and veterans, they think often around PTSD. I know that's definitely a big one, but what other things with mental health impacts our veterans that people might not be aware of?
There's a lot of things that veterans go through transition, and I don't think it matters if you're really a vet or not. I think anytime people go through a significant life change, that can have some effects on your mental health. And speaking from personal experience, when I'd gotten out of the service, it was one of those situations where I wasn't ready. So I kind of felt like I was termed from a job, and it wasn't a decision that I made on my own. So a big part of that was that separation depression that came along with that. I had something that I was doing for 9 years of my life as a very young man, at 20 years old, 19 is when I went in, and then, spent all of my 20s there. And then when I got out, it was kind of shocking because you can't really relate to the very community that you grew up in anymore. Your life experience is different. You at a very young age, at 21 years old, when most people are out, partying up in college and getting cubicle gigs, I was in combat. So, it's really hard to reintegrate sometimes when you feel like you don't have people that understand. So that was a really difficult point in my life, because not only am I trying to cope with, all the memories and all the experiences that I had while I was in the service, but now I'm trying to figure out my identity, because you don't really know who you are anymore.
Okay. What do you wish you knew when you initially got into the transition that would have helped you more?
I wish I would have understood my value. And that was a big thing. I didn't understand my value when I first got out. When I first got out, I didn't think that anything that I learned in the military would apply in the civilian world, and that is 100% untrue. I didn't value my own leadership skills, and I had this weird sense of entitlement, where like I was under the assumption, because I was a staff sergeant in the Army, that I should just automatically get this well-paying job, not fully understanding that I'm starting over. And I wish I would have known that it was okay to start over. It took many years to get to that point.
Okay. What do you think is difficult for people transitioning, veterans transitioning, to ask for help? Because I feel like men in general tend to struggle alone and silently and not reach out for help. I assume, regardless of your gender, if you're a veteran, I think it's even more so that you are hesitant to reach out and ask for help.
It's pride. Pride's a very dangerous thing, and it's a foolish thing, but it's something that you have, and especially with men, right?
Right.
Because we're raised in a society and a culture where men are supposed to be very strong-minded, very strong-willed individuals, and if a man is crying in the workplace, then they're weak, and it's even worse in the military. So when I was in the military, if you had an issue, you kept it to yourself, because you could be classified as kind of like a defective piece of equipment, right? I go back to when my vehicle was hit by an IED, and I was really young, and I wasn't really prepared to deal with that situation. And I remember when I first went to seek mental health care when I was deployed. So I was, it was about 2 weeks after everything happened, and I just kind of wanted to talk to someone about it, because there was a lot of internal blame and things that was going on there at a really young age that I didn't quite understand. And when I went to seek mental health care, the military doctor that was speaking with me wasn't really quite equipped to really deal with that type of mental health, because it wasn't something that was openly talked about. So it was more or less, get back out there and go back to work kind of thing,
Yeah. Well, I personally am just a civilian, so I don't really know like the world that you came from. How do you get that world to essentially do the shift where they are open to talking about mental health more? Because I would think if they're comfortable in that world addressing that, then when you transition, it would be easier. But I don't know if that's even realistic.
No, it's not easier. It's just something that's ingrained into you to kind of bottle it up. You know what I mean? You keep it inside, and I can't speak for everybody. Everybody's different. But I have met a lot of fellow service members that don't talk about anything in it, and I can see it on their faces, and I can see it in talking to them. And then when I start talking to them, they'll open up because they can relate. So that relatability is a huge piece. So once we can start opening up that dialogue between the vet community and the civilian community, about mental health issues, the more we'll be able to grow and overcome these things, which, and we're getting there. I have to tell you that from the time I first became a mental health advocate, when I did my first time ever just speaking out about mental health issues in the community was my very first 22-mile walk in 2016. And I did that in memory of my little brother who took his life the December before. So I can remember when I opened up that dialogue, and it wasn't as well received. There was still a little bit of like, well, you should probably just get over it kind of stuff. But more and more, I think that as a society, we're changing. I think we are understanding that, mental health issues is a real thing. And when someone has a mental health issue, it's usually caused by trauma. And it goes back to, if you have a cut on your hand, it's going to heal. If you break a bone, it's going to heal. But when you break your heart, that's something that can last a lifetime. And the only way to get through that is through community and open discussion and not feeling ashamed.
Because you mentioned a little earlier about there's a little bit of a gap between veterans and civilians, and it's getting better. How would you suggest a civilian approach a loved one that they know are struggling, that they can see something's wrong, but every time they reach out, they don't really get much of a response?
I think it boils down with knowing how to engage that person. We always ask the question, "How are you doing?" And we always say, "Fine." Andy Riggs, a mutual friend of ours, brought up a very good point. He said, "How are you really?" Frame words are important. How are you really? You know what I mean? And then a lot of people don't. And another thing is, don't feel like you have to solve that person's problem. Simply being an ear, simply just listening is enough sometimes. Sometimes when people open up, they don't want you to fix it. They just want you to listen. Because what's happening is as they talk, they start to sort it out themselves.
Right.
And that's what's happened to me personally. When I first started seeking professional mental health care, that happened for me in July of 2015. And my doctor, he just let me talk. He didn't try to solve me. He didn't try to solve any problems. He didn't, he didn't judge. He just let me talk. And next thing I knew, things were starting to get better, and we were starting to narrow in on what was the root cause of my problem. And, so sometimes just setting up those frameworks and then letting that person just open up.
I know you mentioned that it's different for everybody. And if somebody, veteran or civilian or whatever, a friend of a veteran is looking at someone and trying to figure out if how they're acting is different, or if they can tell if they're struggling with their mental health, what are some sort of signs and symptoms of PTSD that people can look out for?
One of the big ones is isolation and anger.
Okay.
I've seen it time and time again, and I think there's a lot of people that would agree. There's always individuals that will isolate, but then their cry for help is also a lot of times in their actions and what they say. So I'll give you an example. Personal experience. I don't like to say I'm an expert or anything. I can just offer personal insight. And for me, I was angry, and I was blaming everybody for the war that I had going on inside. So, and I've seen it in other people that have served, where they don't really go out much. When they do go out, they go out to kind of like toxic environments, and then they lash out on like social media or at loved ones, and then it just creates this snowball effect.
Right. Okay. I feel like there's so many questions I could be asking about PTSD, and I'm not sure what the right questions are to ask as someone that's never personally experienced PTSD. So anybody that's watching that feels like they have questions on PTSD or mental health or veterans or anything like that, feel free to ask. I do want to touch on the holiday that it is this weekend of Memorial Day. And I think a lot of people don't really know what the meaning behind the holiday is, because you'll see a lot of people say Happy Memorial Day, and it's Memorial Day weekend and the sales. And from what I understand from Memorial Day is it's not really a happy holiday. Do you want to kind of give your insights on it?
Look, this is a hard holiday for a lot of people that's served. You know, a lot of times people say thank you for your service and things like that. And by the way, I appreciate that, because the ones that are still here are the ones that are able to carry on the memories of the ones we've lost. So I understand people say happy holiday or happy Memorial Days, and that's in kindness. That's not in
Right.
ignorance. And I think we have to take a moment to seek to understand instead of trying to be understood. So when somebody says happy Memorial Day to me, they're showing appreciation to the people that have made the ultimate sacrifice for this country. They're not being ignorant. So that's okay. However, commercialization in this country is absolutely gross.
Yes.
So they're going to have sales. They're going to have everything. I will openly admit that makes me angry. Unless you plan on donating a portion of those proceeds or something to maybe a family that's lost their mother or father in combat, you know, let's be real. We're in America where everything is for sale. So
right,
including our politicians. But you know, so it's just one of those. It's just one of those things where. For the vet community, a lot of us we feel like we're at a funeral this weekend. So I encourage people to understand that.
How does somebody, because I feel like people celebrate 3-day weekends or whatever, how does somebody respectfully kind of participate in Memorial Day weekend?
You know, I think them simply going out with their families and having a cookout on the patio is what they died for. You have to understand that. Like, we are in a country that we take pride in being a free country. So going out and practicing something with your family in a free country that people have died for, you're doing the right thing. You're not. I don't look at it as something that's bad, or you're not. Right. You're not honoring our service members. I don't view it that way at all. I don't know about others, but I don't personally. Yeah. I would encourage, however, somebody to go put a flag on a grave, or maybe stop by a memorial and have a 1 minute moment of silence or something along those lines. There's no right or wrong way to say thank you.
Yeah, I'm hearing a big, just that showing some sort of appreciation or thanking in some sort of way, especially on this holiday.
Okay. Yeah, absolutely. And I have to, from personal experience, I can remember when I first got out, and I used to get really upset when people were out there barbecuing and stuff like that. I'm like, how come they're not sad like I am? Experience differ. So those people may not have have someone in the military, but I can assure you that those people have probably at some point or another donated to a vet organization, or they've, said thank you for your service to some service member. They've showed appreciation in some way, and they're enjoying the very freedoms that we fought for. So I can't be upset with them, and I can't say that they're doing it wrong. It's not fair.
Yeah. We do have a comment from Brandy. I'm going to pull it up on the screen here. She asks, where can loved ones find reputable resources and supportive information on PTSD in veterans, and how it can affect personal relationships? It's hard dealing with someone going through it without understanding. I believe Brandy's a civilian and trying to look for resources to help veterans she knows.
So there's several organizations you can reach out to understand PTSD. The American Foundation for Suicide Prevention is a very good resource for people to look at information for that. You can also, there's a lot of information on VA websites. I know there's some people like, I don't trust the VA, but the VA does have some really good information. I can personally tell you the VA saved my life. So you can look there. When it comes to dealing with someone with post-traumatic stress disorder, and I will tell you that it takes that individual to realize, okay, I have a problem and I need to get help. And sometimes for the people that are on the opposite end of that, the loved ones and the family members and the friends, it goes back to something I said earlier. Just try to understand and try to be patient. Patience is probably the number one thing you can do when dealing with someone with post-traumatic stress disorder, because everybody deals with that disorder differently. It brings on multiple different things, multiple different symptoms, anything from depression to anger to isolation, you name it. It's there. Paranoia. Me personally, I struggle with that paranoia piece where I always think something is bad is right around the corner when it's really not.
You mentioned how veterans are able to relate to each other. How can we encourage more veterans to reach out to their veteran friends just to kind of check in and make sure they are doing okay, especially in those early days of transition?
I think we are doing that. I think we are getting there.
Okay.
It used to be a lot worse. It used to be, advocates like myself and other Mission 22 and Live for the 22 and a lot of these. There's 40,000 veteran service organizations out there throughout the United States. We are getting better. We are definitely moving forward. And I think what is even more impactful is the civilian community has become an incredible tool and an incredible way of support that I can't help but thank. I look at when I started my 22 fitness class, the amount of non-service members that I had in that class just coming to show their support let me know that I still mattered even though my service was over with. So my hat goes off to you, and that's where I say thank you for your service.
Okay. I'm just trying to come up with some more questions here that I know that I had. I know with a lot of mental illness, and I'm guessing PTSD, again, not someone, I haven't experienced it, so I'm not sure. What does relapse look like? Because I'm sure there's many people that think they're free and clear of certain mental illnesses, and then it comes back out of nowhere. Like, how common is that?
Very common. It never goes away. I still struggle every single day. On the surface, you may see me out there doing my thing, and you see me on social media or whatever. But when the cameras are off, and when I'm not on Facebook, and there's real life things going on here that people don't see, and that always happens. I probably, you can ask my closest friends where I have reached out because I've gotten a little bit more self-aware that I'm on that brink, and I will reach out to really close friends. But it's always there. It doesn't go away. You know what I mean? There were several times along the walk that a certain, memory would pop in my head, but then that's why I do that, because then I look around me and there's other people on that walk that's going through the same thing. So the relapse piece is there.
Okay.
And, as time goes on, I think it's important that everybody does seek professional mental health treatment and don't be ashamed of that, because it's that treatment that's going to help you with those flare-ups, if you will. It's going to help you get there to that point of self-realization.
Okay. Brandy did say thank you for the last question she had, but she has another one. Can you touch on addiction with veterans also? That seems to be a struggle within the community and of service persons as well as times after serving. Yeah,
veterans are more likely to develop what's called substance abuse disorders to help cope with post-traumatic stress disorder. So, in substance abuse disorder is something that can be any form of drug. The most common being alcohol. A lot of service members, when they get out, the first thing they do is they get on the bottle, and because what are they doing? They're getting out. They're already depressed. They're going to a bar and they're drinking a depressant. And that they're looking for those answers, and I was one of them. I'm talking, and you're looking in the bottom of the bottle, and that's why it's an organization, and that's why me as a person, before Live for the 22, was like, hey, we need to get back. I need to get back to doing something active within the community and not just sitting alone and drinking. So that's why I started the 22 fitness class, and I found that through getting professional mental health care. Through working with my therapist, what was the thing that I missed most about the service? And for me, it was working out. It was doing PT with the guys that I served with. So it's really important that when you are transitioning to not try to go down that path of just letting yourself go as much as we want to. Don't get me wrong. We spent years and years and years getting up at 5 a.m. to go run 5 miles and things. But as much as you want to, don't do that, because it's only going to make everything worse.
Okay, thank you. Is there anything else around the topic of PTSD and veterans that I haven't touched on that you think is important to bring up?
I think the most important thing that we need to get across is, if you're a veteran and you have post-traumatic stress disorder, that doesn't make you any less valuable of a citizen than anybody else. A very good friend of mine made a comment to me in a message the other day. He said, "Dan, you're not too broken to lead." And that just stuck with me. So when you get out of the military, you're still a leader. You still have incredible professional development skills. You are worth more than the uniform you wore yesterday, and you're not too broken to lead. And I think that's the message here. And I think that's what service members, when they get out, need to understand. You're still very valuable.
Well, thank you very much for coming on during Memorial Day weekend.
Sure.
And talking about this. Thank you for your service, if I haven't said it already. For those that are watching, this is a series that I do each and every Sunday, with the exception of certain holidays that fall specifically on this date. The next episode that we have of this is next Sunday, May 31st. I have it with Dr. Rachel Buhner of the Kentucky Psychologist Association, tongue twister. I'll get that right later. And Lee McNabb, both are coming on at 3:00 to talk about anxiety. And then on June 7th, I have a guest named Cody Green. He's going to be coming on to talk about schizophrenia, a topic that I've always been curious about, but don't really know anything about. So that'll be an interesting one to go on as well. But for anybody wanting to see if this is your first episode you're watching, I do have like 3 or 4 other ones that you can watch on my Facebook page. Other than that, thank you all for watching and stopping by, and hope you find a positive way to celebrate and to remember Memorial Day weekend for those that we have lost. So thank you.
Thanks, JMatt. I appreciate it.